Hello and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the southeast. The public's being warned not to take risks as the army is brought in to drive ambulances. Paramedics become the latest to strike for a better pay deal.
So I don't want to go home after a long 12-hour shift and have to worry about putting my heating on. But colleagues are using food banks and that's just not acceptable.
4 days until Christmas and still relying on bottled supplies. The Chief Executive of South East Water tells us things are getting better as thousands in Kent and Sussex struggle on.
We work hard to have Christmas and then, so we don't know really. We're in the dark.
We're in the dark.
Also tonight we're talking bank holidays, but how would you feel about banking them for the days that you really want off?
This little light of mine. And we chat to comedian Jason Manford, who's singing his heart out for a food bank charity close to his heart. Good evening. Play safe and don't take chances. That's been the advice from health authorities and the government today. The reason? If you have an accident, you may not be able to get an ambulance.
Paramedics from South East Coast Ambulance Service have been on strike. They say life-threatening calls to the 999 service will be answered. Other callers may have to wait. In a moment, what it's been like in Kent and Sussex.
First to Brighton and our reporter Andy Dickinson. Andy, you've spent some time with striking paramedics today.
Yes, Andrew, the stakes couldn't really be much higher than this dispute, could they? Paramedics here are responding to the most severe emergencies, but of course, until they actually arrive on the scene, they often don't know how serious these calls are. We do know they feel conflicted about today's action, yet they say that the pressures are now so high on the NHS, they had little choice. Paramedics on the picket line, a sight not seen for some 30 years, and yet this one of many protests outside ambulance depots across our region. Frontline emergency staff walking out, not just over paying conditions, they say, but the care of their patients.
Oh, it's crazy at the moment. I've worked for the ambulance service for 9 years and we've always been busy as long as I've known it, but the pressures at the moment are ridiculous. We're leaving people waiting way too long for emergency ambulances. We're leaving old people on the floor with broken hips for up to 8 hours, longer probably, just the ones that I know of. And it's just heartbreaking. Colleagues are using food banks and that's just not acceptable.
We feel like we're not being paid what our value is. And I think another massive point about our striking isn't just about pay. That's a massive side of things. But we are tired of having patients on the floor that do need us. They're on the floor for 12 hours at a time, waiting for us because we're not retaining enough paramedics and ambulance crews. And for us, our patient care is the forefront. Pay comes second, patient is first all the time.
Well, while we've been filming here at this picket, emergency calls are obviously being responded to by paramedics, but it's not just them. Emergency care assistants and call handlers are also on strike today, not just here in Brighton, but across our region. In a statement, CCAM has said we will work closely with our unions and all staff to ensure that the impact on our patients is kept to a minimum. South East Coast Ambulance Service went on last night to declare a critical incident, but despite even that, union representatives here fear the government isn't listening.
I don't think they're even willing to talk to us at the moment because they can't separate the issue of pay with what we actually want, which is investment in our service so we can recruit more staff and, more importantly, keep them in the job. People come here, I've seen them come and go over the last 12 years. We are always running on minimum manpower. We are always running at 110%, and it shows when we're out there and we're struggling to meet our targets and see the patients that we need to see.
Some military personnel were seen helping here at the Royal Sussex County Hospital. The cost of strikes like these, an emergency in itself. Well, as you could see there at the end of my report, some military personnel have been spotted helping to deliver patients, but at the moment, outside this A&E at least, it seems fairly quiet.
Andy, live in Brighton, thank you. Well, to Chatham now, and Kit Bradshaw. Kit, there's been a lot of public sympathy, support even for the nurses' strike. Is that being matched for the paramedics tonight?
Well, if public support was just measured by the sound of car horns, then I'd say yes, a lot of passing motorists encouraging the picket line here earlier. But there is some more scientific evidence to back that up. A recent YouGov poll found that 63% of the public across England support these ambulance strikes, just 31% opposed. And that encouraging sentiment shared by some of those I spoke to at Medway Maritime Hospital a little earlier.
Support them, man, pay them their money. They deserve a lot of money, do you get what I'm saying? They work hard, so yeah, man, let them strike.
Say I've got on my dustbin, I have an accident at work, who's going to come out and pick me up off the floor, basically, you know?
So you're being extra cautious today?
I am, yeah, we have to with our job, yeah. Health and safety law, we have to be so careful, work on the roads and that, yeah.
I think it must have been a very difficult decision for them to make, but I'm sure if they were out and, you know, they saw someone in trouble, I'm sure they'd help them.
Okay, the advice today is not to take risks, to avoid situations where you might end up in a situation where you might need an ambulance. But in certain circumstances, CCAM say they are providing emergency cover.
Yes, ambulances have been responding, but what CCAM have said is that they've been prioritising getting to the most seriously ill and injured. And what's that's meant in practice is that if you called 999 today and were deemed not to be life-threatening, you probably waited far longer for an ambulance, or were told no ambulance would be sent at all. But patient groups say this should all be seen in the context of a wider healthcare crisis.
GPs are also under a lot of pressure. That means a lot of people go to A&E when they probably don't need to. The hospitals are full. They're struggling to discharge patients to make room for those coming in the ambulances. So you have to look at the whole system as a whole, and one of the common denominators is that there are staff shortages across the piece.
It should be said that we did ask the ambulance service for an interview today, but they declined. This strike ends at midnight with another planned for next Wednesday.
Kit in Chatham, thank you.
The government insists it's offered health workers a fair pay rise, and for the moment at least, it's digging its heels in. Live to our political correspondent, Phil Hornby. Phil, can the government hold that line when lives are being put at risk?
That's a very good question, Andrew, because politically this is very difficult for the government. The scenes we've seen today are very different, for instance, from the ongoing train strike. We're used to train strikes in the southeast. They are a pain in the neck, but life goes on. It's rather different when you see nurses and now ambulance workers on picket lines. And as Kit was saying a moment ago, it seems at the moment at least, most people support these strikes. Not the Health Secretary, though.
Obviously, there will be significant volatility today, and that will have an impact on patient safety. In terms of the pay process, we have a very long-standing process around the independence of the pay review bodies. We have accepted their recommendations in full this year, and of course that comes on top of last year prioritising the NHS when other public sector workers faced a pay freeze, and NHS staff got 3% last year, and this year we've accepted those recommendations in full.
Phil, we've seen a lot of strikes recently, haven't we? Rail workers, the Royal Mail. Are there more to come?
Yeah, there are lots more. The government are bracing themselves, Andrew, for a very, very difficult start to the new year. January, February, March could be full of strikes. But they're also promising some controversial new legislation which will make it more difficult for key workers to strike. There'll be a minimum service guarantee. It happens in other countries. The government want it to happen here. And you can be sure there'll be an almighty row about it here at Westminster in the new year.
Phil Hornby, thank you. In other news, a man's body has been found in the undercarriage of a plane at Gatwick Airport arriving from Gambia. Sussex police say the discovery was made on a TUI aircraft at around 4 a.m. on the 7th of December. The information has only been made public today, and officers are continuing to investigate.
The Home Secretary says she's yet to find a new airline to deport migrants to Rwanda who've crossed on small boats to Kent. Last June, the government used a plane run by a Spanish charter company for its first deportation flight. That was abandoned at the last minute due to legal challenges. This morning, Suella Braverman told the Lords Justice and Home Affairs Committee she was in conversation with several carriers so deportation flights can resume.
A suspect has been arrested following the death of a man in Sittingbourne. Police say the victim was found with stab wounds at a house on College Road early this morning. He's not been named but was in his 40s. An 18-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder.
A man has appeared in court 4 days after a woman's body was found in Eastbourne. Sabrina Cooper, who was 68, was discovered in a house on Connaught Road. Tony King, who's 59, is charged with murder. He appeared at Brighton Magistrates today and is due to appear at Lewis Crown Court in the morning.
A flood safety warning has been issued after 4 adults, a child and a dog were rescued from 3 cars in Barkham. Crews from Lewis, Uckfield and Crowborough were sent to Barkham Mills Road after the vehicles got stuck in the water. No one was injured, and East Sussex Fire and Rescue Service are reminding people to avoid driving through floodwater.
Thousands of people in Kent and Sussex have faced another day without water, with many deciding to cancel and reorganise plans for Christmas.
Many have taken to social media to vent their anger about a lack of clear information from South East Water. But it's a day that has, at last, seen major progress. The latest from the boss of South East Water shortly. First, this report from John Ryle.
Day 6 since the taps ran dry in Tunbridge Wells, and with no timeline once again from South East Water, many of the people collecting bottles at Pembury today feared that Christmas plans were about to go down the drain.
All we get told is it's going to be the 23rd, and then we get told it's 6 o'clock today, and it just keeps changing and changing.
We work hard to have Christmas, and then, so we don't know really. We're in the dark.
We're in the dark.
6 miles away, hundreds of homes in Crowborough have faced a 3rd day without water. Shepherd Neame's Pub of the Year in Crowborough has had to close and cancel bookings. One of dozens of businesses that have lost thousands of pounds and will be seeking compensation.
There's going to be complications from this. It's the busiest week in Christmas. All the independent businesses are really going to suffer. We're just waiting like everyone else to find out what's going on and when we can reopen.
Another major financial casualty. No water at the Assembly Hall Theatre in Tunbridge Wells meant panto cancellations yesterday, but it's back on tonight. This Tunbridge Wells care home was promised a delivery of bottled water for its 33 residents yesterday, but none came.
So my manager had to go out late last night. She lives quite far away. She made sure that she bought 60 litres of water and brought it in.
And there were serious consequences for one resident who likes to look her best.
Well, I suppose being a lady, we like to look smart always, and we couldn't have our hair done this time. So we had to leave that and look at it, because I didn't have it done.
But South East Water's bad hair days may be coming to an end. Water was restored to more than 3,000 homes in Tunbridge Wells today, and it looks like there's more good news in the pipeline. John Ryle, ITV News, Tunbridge Wells.
Finally, some good news for customers there of South East Water. Well, let's cross to the Chief Executive of South East Water, David Hinton, who's at the company HQ at Snodland for us tonight. Mr. Hinton, thank you for talking to us. Now, there's never a good time to be without water, but can you understand why thousands of your customers were so upset that this happened just days before Christmas?
I can understand and only apologise to those customers. This was caused really by the freeze thaw. We saw an extra 100 million litres of water taken from our system in a matter of hours, which effectively emptied our reservoirs where we store the water. And we've been working really hard since that freeze thaw to get customers back on, and we're starting to make real inroads into that. So we are hoping that all customers should be back on tomorrow, well ahead of the Christmas.
But you must understand that, your customers expect you to have contingency plans. And we saw in John's report there that we had Birkin Lodge, a care home, where people really struggled because they didn't have the promised water deliveries they needed. It caused major problems.
Yeah, we realise that it's absolutely essential to get alternative water supplies when we have a loss of public water supply like this. And we've utilised bottled water stations, but we're really conscious that some customers can't get to those bottled water stations. So we've been delivering to over 5,000 customers' homes directly with bottled water. We've also kept a number of hospitals in supply by using tankers, and we're trying to get to all the care homes as well.
But freezing temperatures happen, so why didn't you have an emergency plan in place? I mean, this has taken days to sort out.
We do have an emergency plan, and that bottled water provision is all part of it. I mean, this year has been an exceptional weather year. We've seen storm units with the winds and the very high temperatures in the summer demand, which broke all records. And we saw some flooding in Tunbridge Wells in Kent area, and now we've seen this freeze-thaw event. It's been absolutely exceptional. So we put pressure on the system, and like I say, we're working really hard. We've got a great team of people at South East Water that are spending a lot of time, 24/7, trying to get these supplies back on before Christmas.
And a lot of customers have had to rethink their Christmas plans. Finally, what are you saying about compensation?
We were absolutely committed to looking at compensation once the event's finished. At the moment, our absolute focus is to get the customers back on ahead of Christmas. That is our #1 priority.
And by Christmas?
And by Christmas, absolutely.
OK, they heard it here first. Chief Executive of South East Water, David Hinton, thank you.
OK, the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30. It's Mary Nightingale.
Coming up on the programme, don't take risks and don't get drunk. A warning to the public today as paramedics take to the picket lines. Thousands go on strike over pay while government ministers accuse the unions of putting their patients at risk. Also, a man described as brutal, vicious and cruel is given a whole life sentence for murdering a pregnant woman and 3 children. Ukraine's President Zelensky is heading to the United States to meet his most important war ally. And
Christmas trees lined up all in a row.
the famous faces teaming up for the next Christmas #1. Well, do join me if you can for those stories and more at 6:30.
Thank you, Mary. Now, lots of us will be enjoying time off work in the next couple of weeks with 3 bank holidays on the way. And you might even be making holiday plans for next year. So do bank holidays help or do they get in the way?
More the merrier, I say. The pandemic made flexible working more common, and an increasing number of offices are applying that idea to bank holidays, with staff switching days for religious festivals or taking time off on a day that suits them better. Here's James Webster.
Does anything quite sum up a British bank holiday better? People travelling for miles in search of sand and sunshine. In a typical year, England and Wales has 8 bank holidays. New Year, then Easter, 2 in May, August and Christmas. Next year, the King's coronation gives us a 9th. But there are some who would prefer to take those days at different times. Here at Reflect in Maidstone, which helps companies with their digital marketing, we've been asking staff if that's an idea they'd prefer.
It would be more convenient to be able to choose, but personally I think they're there for a reason, so they're symbolic of different days.
They're in the diary and you have to take them 3 or 4 times a year, and they're kind of spaced out nicely. And I think the benefit of them as well is that there's always other people off. So if you want to see family, do events and things, you know other people are available.
Part of me thinks yes, because you'd get better flexibility in your schedule and you can sort of group your holidays together and book them off at the same time. But I think I prefer to sort of have the festivities marking the different times of the year, and you get to kind of enjoy all the themes that go around it.
One company which has just changed its policy on bank holidays is this firm, which makes sustainable cosmetics with fewer plastics. Staff can swap some bank holidays to coincide with their own religious festivals instead of Easter or Christmas.
I think it's super important for us, being at the kind of forefront of sustainable business, to attract talent that is, really motivated and believes in the brand that we're trying to create, and part of that means having a kind of flexible work experience for them. I think it's really important to be flexible, and especially young people care more and more about this, and if you don't offer that kind of flexibility in the workplace, then someone else will, and they'll go somewhere else.
Many staff in the diverse workforce here have their own reasons for wanting different days off, including Noah, who's Jewish.
At my first interview, I said to my manager, this is the most important thing for me. Is that possible? And he directly me say yes, and was super easy, so I was completely happy.
But encouraging other bosses to introduce such a change doesn't look like a priority for the government, which says the current pattern of bank holidays is well established. Time off may be taken at a later date, as some individuals have to work on a bank holiday. But what if a member of staff just wants a different day to avoid the bank holiday crowds? This employment lawyer thinks allowing more flexibility could be good for businesses.
It makes perfect sense, particularly since COVID, that employees now more than ever want to work when and where they want to work, and everybody's seeking greater flexibility. And I see no reason that lots more employers would have problems following suit with this.
As more companies do what this one has done, it will prompt a bigger debate about when we should all have time off and whether that should be at the same time as everyone else. James Webster, ITV News.
Oh, interesting. Well, Mark McQuillan is with us now, talking sport. And Mark, we start with a resilient performance from the Gills in the Cup.
That's right, and I think the point that really highlights that, Sangeeta, is there are 72 places which separate League Two Gillingham and Premier League Wolves, but there was nothing to choose between them, certainly as far as the scoreline was concerned, for most of last night's EFL Cup tie. And Gills boss Neil Harris says he was proud of his players after the 2-0 defeat at Molineux. They had to soak up plenty of pressure. Wolves came closest to scoring in the first half, and they got a penalty with less than 15 minutes to go after a tussle in the Gills area. Raul Jimenez converted it coolly, and they sealed the win with a second late on. Next up for Gillingham, a league game against the other side in the relegation zone, with them Colchester on Boxing Day.
Zero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
Brighton are in EFL Cup action tonight. They go to League One side Charlton. It's the Seagulls' first match in more than 5 weeks due to the World Cup break, a competition which saw one of their key players, Alexis McAllister, lift the trophy. And the Brighton boss says they are very proud of him.
I think he was one of the best player in a World Cup competition. His style of play was clear. He didn't make mistakes. He understand before the play. I wrote many messages with him, and I'm very happy for him, for us.
And Kent Cricket have announced plans to improve their ground in Canterbury. These images give an indication as to what some of the changes might look like. The proposals have been submitted to Canterbury City Council. The planned work includes new fencing, an updated match officials area, and an improvement to seating in the stands. That's all for now. Much more sport coming up soon as the festive schedule really ramps up.
We cannot wait. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Now, for lots of people, school assembly hymns are ingrained in the memory, and given the chance to sing along to songs like Kumbaya, My Lord, they would be word perfect.
Oh, so many good memories of that. Well, comedian and presenter Jason Manford is giving us a chance to do just that by releasing a single of what he calls assembly bangers in a bid for the Christmas number one. What was funny about that, Andrew?
Kumbaya, my friend. All the proceeds are going towards helping food bank charity The Trussell Trust, which handed out more than 258,000 food parcels in the South East last year. Amrit Birdie has been speaking to Jason.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
Christmas is a nostalgic time of year for many of us, and this year comedian Jason Manford is hoping to transport people back to the school assemblies of their childhoods. He says his new single, aptly named Assembly Bangers, is a fun take on some classic school hymns. But the cause behind the track is far more serious, with all proceeds going towards funding emergency food parcels this winter.
It's quite a nostalgic track. Reminds me of what it was like when I was a kid growing up. You know, and I grew up in a, I guess what you would describe as a below poverty line childhood, you know. And so as a child, you know, we relied on, well, the local church it was at the time, and you know, charities to help us out. So it just made sense, really, just to sort of help people out. This time of year is a difficult time of year. At the best of times, it's a particularly difficult year with the cost of living crisis and everything else that's going on. Obviously, lots of working class people on strike at the moment, trying to get better conditions and better pay for where they are. So there's a lot of people who are going to need the Trussell Trust.
In the last year, 2.1 million food parcels have been handed out by the Trussell Trust, and more than 800,000 of those went to children. The charity says they're predicting things to get even harder.
Every 13 seconds a parcel's being given out. We know that this is going to continue over the winter. We've probably not seen the worst yet. Every single Trussell Trust food bank relies on donations from the public. That's for the food, for the volunteers, and for any income to run the operation. So if people can spare any money or any food to help the food banks in their local area, it would be really appreciated.
The single has already reached the top spot on the iTunes chart, and its success has provided Jason with some unexpected winter warmth.
It's just been fun just to see it going up and down the charts and knocking Taylor Swift out the top 5 for a couple of days, and it's just been bonkers and really quite heartwarming and life affirming, and it's just been a really fun thing to be involved in.
Amrit Birdie, ITV News.
It is strange when you see them like in a concert hall like that, but I like all things bright and beautiful. Will it be? Here's Shireen Jordan with your weather.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
A very good evening to you. It's been a cloudy and a damp day today. Still holding on though to those mild temperatures, and I think that will be a similar picture for tomorrow. Outbreaks of patchy rain on and off throughout the course of the day. I think we could see some mist and hill fog slow to clear, especially along higher ground tomorrow morning. And though we will keep those mild temperatures once again. If we look at the pressure chart, you can see low pressures dominating our weather. We've got these frontal systems sweeping their way through. That's what's bringing this wet weather. And then when one clears, another one arrives again. But back to the here and now, the winds are coming from a southwesterly direction, breezy along coastal counties, outbreaks of rain this evening, and that could be heavy and persistent for a time, and we could see some mist and fog patches form overnight, lingering through until tomorrow morning. Temperatures falling away to between 6 and 8 degrees Celsius. A cloudy start then to Thursday morning, and that mist and fog could be slow to clear, especially amongst higher ground. Rain pushing its way eastwards on and off throughout the course of tomorrow. Breezy along coastal counties, and I think a rather damp and grey day to come, but your maximum temperature tomorrow 11 or 12 degrees Celsius. Your times of high water at Dover at 9:33 in the morning and again at 3 minutes past 10 in the evening. So your outlook then for the next few days, a murky day to come on Thursday, and I think a mixture of rain and sunny spells on Friday, but those winds picking up, especially along coastal counties, and I think perhaps some brighter spells on Saturday for Christmas Eve, but once again, more wet weather to come. Bye-bye for now.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
In just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Please join Andrew for our late update just after 10:30 this evening. From all of us here, thank you for watching. See you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.